FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's the last day of April 2018. Made it through 4 months without anything. Well, we've had insane events for sure, but not as insane as they could have been and as they're likely to get. And as always, join the party. Just send us an email. Love to see your emails in my mailbox, kl@kerrylutz.com. And if you're listening on YouTube, which so many of you do now, even though I prefer podcast myself, just click the subscribe button and ring the bell. Automatically, you'll get notification anytime we post a show. Well, the madness that's going on, the madness that's about to come, and whatever else we can think of. Doug Casey's here with us now. Find his work over at internationalman.com, as well as so many other venues on the internet. Doug, welcome back. It's great to speak with you.
Thanks, Kerry. It's a pleasure to be with you, although only electronically, because right now I'm in Uruguay on a farm out in the country, and I'm anticipating the festivities tomorrow. May Day is celebrated most of the world, not in the U.S., but it is here in the backward Socialist Republic of Uruguay. May Day is kind of for the workers and peasants of the world.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a holiday.
Actually, you know what May 1st is in the U.S., in the States?
No, tell me.
It's Law Day, and it's the day that the American Bar Association has chosen to celebrate the fact that we are a nation of laws and not men, or at least we once were. I think you could probably take issue, although now that Trump's come back, all of a sudden we're a nation of laws again. How did that happen?
Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, we've got about not just one, but about 2 orders of magnitude more laws than there should be. Mm-hmm. So I'm for abolishing most of the laws that are on the books. Although I don't have anything against being governed by laws, not men. It's just that we've got far too many of them.
Yeah.
And I may have observed to you in the past, Kerry, that I even think that the 10 Commandments are way too many laws, and I don't actually agree with all of them. But I think that there should only be 2 laws. 1, do all that you say you're going to do, and 2, don't aggress against other people and their property. And that way, nobody can say that they don't know the law. There are only 2 laws.
I couldn't agree with you more. And really, every system of laws, legitimate, going back to Greek, Roman, all kind of went along with that because that kind of supports the social compact, right? It does. If you do what you say you're going to do, and the first thing, it's like the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. That's the first thing. What am I planning to do? Is it going to do any harm? And then the next thing is, really, well, what's it going to do for me? And I think the world would definitely be a better place. But you can't even get people to hold a door open for somebody walking out of Starbucks. How do you get people, raise your consciousness and get you to do this? That's what I don't understand, Doug. And maybe you've got more insights than I do because you've given it a lot of thought.
Well, I have. And when I said earlier that the 10 Commandments are too many, frankly, I'm not even confident that I can reel them all off. 10 is too many to remember. Quite frankly, that's why I like the 2 great laws. But I'll go even further. I'll say that there's only 1 law. This is almost like in physics, where physicists have been trying to take all the laws of the universe and compact them into one great law governing the entire universe. And I think I've done that when it comes to the legal system. And the one great law is do as thou wilt, but be prepared to accept the consequences. Because basically people do what they want to do anyway, but they're not willing to accept the consequences, or they don't think about the consequences. So if that could be drilled into people, I think it would be a much more responsible world. And that's the key. We want people to be responsible for their actions.
Hey, so responsible for your actions. We got half the country voted for Trump. The other half doesn't know what they did. They have no idea what they're doing. And we've got Trumptopia, which looks like it's fading off, Trumphoria. The Trumphoria seems to be fading off, but they've had this thing, basically, the deep state, the shadow government, which isn't exactly one and the same. There's definitely overlap, but they're two different entities. They've been out to get him from day one, and he seems to be turning the tables on them. What's your take on what's going on in the formerly free states of America?
Well, first of all, I want to compliment you on an excellent observation about the deep state and the shadow government, which overlap but aren't quite the same. You're right. And one of I'd say the best thing about Trump is the fact that those groups hate him so much. And anything, it's almost a question of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, kind of. And I'm not crazy about a lot of the things that Trump has done and is doing, but the fact that he's kind of dragging these people out from under a rug inadvertently, if nothing else, is a good thing.
Or a rock.
and listen, it's wonderful that whether by accident or by intention, I'm not sure how it worked, that it looks like good things are happening in Korea.
Yeah, how did that happen? I still don't understand it. I confess to not really getting. There's all these conspiracy theories like, the CIA has been propping up the Kim Jong-un government and helping them develop nukes, etc. And yet, none of this seems to make much sense to me here, Doug. I mean, I know they're evil, but are they that evil?
No, they're not that evil. And as a matter of fact, look, anybody the thing is the enemy, whoever that may be, is always painted as evil. But, the fact is that Hitler and Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot and name all these people, Saddam Hussein, who's one of the latest devils, and now Assad in Syria. None of these people thought or think they're evil. Everybody thinks he's the good guy doing the right thing, maybe using harsh measures, maybe having to be extreme, but it's necessary for the greater good. Everybody thinks they're a good guy, frankly. There aren't any people that around with white caps that are saying I'm evil and I love it. There are very few of them.
Yeah.
So that the fact is, sure, it's a criminal regime in North Korea, but most of the regimes in the world are criminal. They're just prosperous criminal regimes. The difference with North Korea is that it's a non-prosperous criminal regime, like Maduro's regime in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Sure, he's a criminal, but it's not prosperous. But there's, Macron's regime in France. He's a criminal too, but it's prosperous there. So it's just a question of how they tweak things.
So it's okay as long as people are making money and they're prospering, then they'll put up with the criminality. But when things go down the tubes, then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, we got to stop this. They're criminals. How can we put up with this? This is terrible, right?
That's exactly right. What really scares me in today's world is the fact that, war. It's quite possible that serious war could break out in a number of places in the world. And it would be really unpleasant and inconvenient. That's what scares me more than a collapse of the economy, actually.
Yeah.
Which is inevitable and imminent, both, I feel.
Yeah, so that could happen any moment, really? You think war in any number of places it could happen?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Because China is definitely a rising power. I was in China. I mean, I lived in Hong Kong for years in the 80s. And I visited China back when people were all wearing Mao suits, and it was a very primitive place.
Yes.
I visited China when you flew into the Beijing airport, and it was the size of the airport in Aspen. And when you drove into Beijing from the airport, there were still ox carts on the side of the road with farmers plowing in the paddies, and it was a 2-lane road. So the degree to which China's changed in the last 40 years is literally unbelievable, okay? Now, the point I'm making is this. It's that China is going to continue growing at that rate for a number of reasons. It's rising, and the U.S. is falling. And what I'm afraid of is that the only thing that the U.S. government has that really works is the military.
True.
And they may try to use it while it's still the best in the world. So I'm afraid of that. And what are U.S. carriers doing floating around in the South China Sea? That's like if the Chinese Navy was floating around in the Gulf of Mexico or off of Santa Catalina. Mm-hmm. It's asking for trouble.
Certainly is. Certainly has the potential to really stir things up there. So, so war is possible, but we're in this kind of malaise, economic malaise for the past 10 years. There's really been no real economic growth in the world, has there?
Not really. Technology has continued to improve and get better. Computer technology, biotechnology, genetic engineering, robotics. So it's all been technology driven. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that Moore's law is a correct description of the universe. That was formulated, as you'll recall, in the 60s by Gordon Moore. And he said that every approximately 18 months, computing power will double and costs will halve. And that's been true all the way along, and it's still true in all areas of technology, not just computing. And that's what's really helped hold things together and kept the standard of living up. Also, the fact that people are wired like squirrels, and everybody wants to save their nuts. Yeah, put them aside for the winter. Mm-hmm. So, despite all the stupidity of government, that's made things better. Mm-hmm. But that said, there are all these financial distortions that have been cranked into the economy that nearly came unglued back in 2007, 2008. Mm-hmm. And they will again very soon.
Yeah, well, don't you find it amazing? It's been 10 years. We almost had a really near-death financial economic experience. I mean, we were 3 days away in the States here from the trucks not running because the trucking companies couldn't get, or the supermarkets couldn't get letters of credit from their banks. So the Federal Reserve had to step in and backstop the letters of credit. And then the buyers wouldn't accept the letter of credit because they thought the banks were no good and weren't going to pay it. So this was like, if the truck stopped running, we're in big trouble because there's 3 days worth of food in your average supermarket.
That's right. And a day or two's worth of food in people's closets. And that's about it. So a lot of, I'm surprised at how things recovered from that point. And I'm surprised that we haven't had explosive inflation since then. But, I think it's going to happen. Cause has effect in the real world. Sometimes it can be delayed and the effects can be indirect. But I think it could get ugly, and it's way overdue because of all these stupid things that they did that they pat themselves on the back for. I mean, in a free world, the ideal thing would be not to have a Federal Reserve, because you wouldn't need a Federal Reserve if banks were privately owned and run on classical principles. But that's all ancient history at this point. Yeah. Nobody even knows about it, much less understands it.
Yeah, when is that going to happen? It's like, forget about a gold standard. If we're lucky, we'll have a crypto standard, and maybe we won't be lucky because it'll be government-backed crypto, whatever that is. I just don't believe that the government's going to allow cryptos to take over the monetary system without a major fight. And I always kid with Rick Rule. I said, Rick, let me ask you a question. Are you willing to go spend 5 years in jail, but for intent for possession with intent to distribute Bitcoin? And he says, of course not. But there's some young kid who has nothing to lose who will take that chance.
Well,
right?
This is why, Kerry, I spend most of the year outside of the U.S. because in a backward little place like Uruguay, the government is small and they're not interested in a well-to-do foreigner living here. I don't bother them. I bring something to the local economy. They don't care about me. And when I go across the Plate River to Argentina, it's about the only country in the world, believe it or not, this is only recently true in the last 2 years, it's actually moving in the right direction. In other words, where, they've fired 80,000 government employees, which in Argentina, with only 40 million people, can make a difference. And they're rolling back laws and all this type of thing. So things are favorable there. But, in the U.S., even with Trump, things are still going in the wrong direction. In Canada, under Trudeau, they're going in a radically wrong direction.
It's a nightmare.
And in most of the places in the world. And in Mexico, they may elect this guy. What the hell? Is it Obrador? I think that's his name.
He's a commie. He's a card-carrying Maoist, Stalinist, Leninist, right?
Yes.
Not necessarily in that order.
Yes, but this is happening in a lot of places, like in New Zealand, where I lived for years, which was, it had become the bottom of the barrel by the 80s, and Roger Douglas turned the place around. And now, after booming for years, I guess they didn't like a boom where there was prosperity and everywhere. They elected a 37-year-old woman who is also a hardline communist as the prime minister. So there's something wrong with the human being as a creature, that when things get too good for too long,
they got to screw it up.
Find some way to screw this up.
Yeah, they got to screw it up. But look, Austria elected that guy. They're calling him a nationalist, but he just seems to want to do the right thing. He's way to the right. And, there is some hope here in Argentina, elected their president, who is a very free market-oriented, pro-mining, too. He's turned Argentina from one of the worst jurisdictions for mining in the world to one of the best almost overnight.
That's right. And Argentina has huge shale oil deposits. And if people believe that Macri will be reelected in a couple of years, they might actually invest, and Argentina could become one of the world's major oil producers as well. So, the world could be so good, and there could be so much capital that's accumulated that we'd solve the really serious problems, which is, say, aging, for instance, rolling back the clock of grandfather time, things of that nature. But instead, we ship all our money off to the government and they fritter it away on welfare and warfare programs.
Yes, we do that. We seem to be quite expert. Well, government is so good at wasting money. They've got it down to an art form.
In fact, I don't even like to say wasting money. I like to say destroying capital.
Yeah.
Because that's what it actually is. Money just represents something. Kind of easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
But when you destroy capital, that's buildings and businesses and things of that nature, that's much more serious.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what it comes down to, because every dollar that the government spends, it's a crowding out of people who could actually earn a return on that investment and could actually do something with that money constructive, right?
Exactly. And the government hires people to dig ditches during the day and fill them up at night. And those people, if the government wasn't doing that, would find something productive to do. Creating goods and services that people actually want, that increase their standard of living instead of just make work. I mean, it's absolutely perverse, but still people think the government's their friend and they support the concept. We just need better people in the government. But the government itself, the institutions can't.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Everything you're saying, Doug, is correct. and nobody seems to get it. Are we the only ones that get it here, Doug?
Well, there's not too many, Kerry. This is, incidentally, this is why I've stopped writing nonfiction books. My nonfiction books did very well. 2 of them were New York Times bestsellers. But I've gone to writing fiction books because people like to hear things in the context of a story as opposed to a lecture, which is what a nonfiction book is. So that's why I wrote Speculator 2 years ago, and last year Drug Lord, where our hero becomes a speculator and uncovers a mining fraud in Africa, gets involved in a bush war. He comes back and becomes a drug lord in the U.S., where I show that you can be a good guy and be a drug lord. And now he's going to be an assassin in the book that we're currently working on. We're reforming the idea of the political assassin. Everybody thinks that Cassius and Brutus and John Wilkes Booth were bad guys. Well, no, they were good guys. And our hero, Charles Knight, will put that into a current context. So that's what I'm doing right now to try to make things better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, well, I was reading the last book you wrote. It's really well written, really great plot, really interesting. So highly recommend it. And yeah, sometimes fiction is the best way to get through to people because your defenses are down. You're not really thinking about it. You're looking for entertainment, and it just seems to work well. So
it does. And movies are actually better than books, even, because everybody sees movies. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like a lot of people read books anymore.
Hey, there's so many good people doing YouTube videos out there. You can do like unbelievable quality videos, very almost next to nothing. And editing is now so much easier. Everything's easier. And it's amazing. So anyway, Doug, so we find you at internationalman.com, best place to find your work. We'll have a link to it in the site. Hey, just send us an email, be part of the discussion, kl@kerrylutz.com, and the Twitter feed's at Kerry Lutz. Doug, we'll talk to you again real soon, and enjoy the freedom. All right.
Thank you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.